Hi clay friends, in this video we're going to talk about a few decorating tips. The human eye likes things divided into thirds, likes odd numbers and things in thirds. You'll notice in photography the focal point is often 1/3 placed either horizontally or vertically. Same's true for decorating our pots if you want it to be soothing and visually pleasing to the human eye. So this is a coil pot triangle bowl that I made for our demo in the coil bowl lesson, and I've divided it roughly into 1/3. It's about 4.5 inches, so we're about 1 1/4 here, and I'm going to demonstrate a combination of textures and surface design. So I've got this going a little bit here. I'm just taking a little loop tool, so take any loop tool that you want, and I've sectioned off this lower 1/3, and what I'm doing is I'm just twisting. So I'm pressing and twisting, pressing, twisting, pressing, twisting, and then every once in a while I go in with a dry brush and get rid of the crumbs. So I'll show you a little bit of the look that that's going to give us. So it just gives us kind of an interesting texture at the top. So I'm going to go ahead and finish using my loop tool and decorating the rest of the upper portion here. I have my texture along the rim here, just getting off any extra little crumbs there. And this is definitely handmade. I'm not going for perfection. I don't want it to look like it's machine made. The next step is for the 2/3 along here, which when I flip this over is the bottom of the pot. I'm going to lay down some white underglaze. This is a red clay. So back to design theory a little bit. Remember that complementary colors look good together. So I have a red clay. So I'm going to do some white, but then with some turquoise greens. Red and green are complementary colors. So I'm going to lay down some white, and then we're going to practice those decals that we talked about in other lessons with some turquoise on here. Just as a review, or if you haven't seen the surface decorating video yet, this is how I make my little homemade decals. This is just a strip of cheap newsprint. I buy like kids' drawing tablets when they're on sale. The thinner the better. And I cut out some strips that are about the width of the band that I have on my coil pot here. And I'm just making some really loose, stylized sort of leaf shapes. And this is black velvet underglaze with a fairly small point on the top. And after these are dry, I'll go in and add some color. I'm going to do some like turquoise green because I like that with the red clay. I'm just doing a variety of sizes. I want these really loose. Don't want them to look like store-bought craft store decals. And I want a variety. I want some different sizes and shapes. And again, definitely stylized. I'm just doing some really loose design work. I filled my abstract leaf forms in with some combinations of like blue-green, turquoise, teal, kind of mixed up the colors a bit there. Now I'm just going to cut these out, and I'll use some of them on this coil pot that we've been working on, and then the rest I'll just store in a baggie, a little Ziploc baggie, and keep this for other projects. Once you have your homemade decals cut out and ready to go, you can lay them out. If you're doing a platter or something, you can lay out your shapes and kind of plan it a little bit. There's a couple different ways to start applying them. One method is basically you're going to want to get moisture on both sides a little bit. So one method is to just take a damp sponge and get the area you're going to lay it on damp. And then I'm just going to get my finger damp also, so that both sides of that underglaze are getting rehydrated. And then you want to press really hard. I either use like the back of my fingernail or a red rib. So we want to make sure it's on there really well. So I'm kind of giving pressure in all different directions, starting from the middle and pulling out. This takes just some experimenting. If you overwork it, you're going to start to blur a little bit the lines from your decal. But if you don't do it enough, you're not going to get a lot of the glaze. Either way you go, you're going to get a mark like a print maker. So it's going to leave a unique print. It's very different from applying the underglaze directly. So it's going to add an extra textural element. It looks kind of like antique, like it's got a lot of wear and tear or printmaking, you know, that sort of look to it. Then you need some sort of sharp tool, a needle tool or anything. And we're going to just gently peel this paper back up. So there's one of our shapes with that printmaker look to it. Another method, some people like to put a layer on back of the decal. If you used a base layer of slip, you'd brush slip on the back. If I used a base layer of white underglaze, so I can take the same white underglaze and just put some of that on the back. And let that sit just a second there to kind of rehydrate. Go ahead and do a couple of them. And so this is, instead of getting your pot wet and laying it on there, we're just adding a little bit of this base surface. This is exactly the same thing as this. So we're going to add some of that on there. And then let that soak in just a minute, and then we can apply it and do the same thing. It depends a little bit, experiment. It depends on what products you're using and how thick. Everybody has a different style, and it makes a difference how thick your original decals were, the amount of glaze or underglaze that you put on there. So let's take this guy and let's see, go ahead and put him right here. I'm going to get my finger wet. So the underside is wet with underglaze. So the top side, just using my finger. And I'm just going to use my fingernail to make sure that that's really attaching to the pot there. And you can tell when your paper is wet enough, it kind of gets translucent, so you can kind of see through it. Then you know it's wet enough. I grab a sharp tool here. Pull that off a little bit. So here's some of them. I'm going to fill this in the whole way around, but it's the same thing for all of these. Mostly play around with it and see what system works for you. There's a lot of different ways to do it. But if you like that printmaker look, it's a fun alternative to decorating your pots. And I kind of like these shapes, abstract leaves or pods, or even almost like fish swimming up a river or something. I play around with those shapes a lot. So pick a shape that you like and play around with it and see what it looks like for you.